Committee. Thank you, Dan. This meeting of the Finance Committee to order. We have an agenda in front of us. Are there any corrections, additions, or omissions for the agenda? So hearing none, I'd welcome a motion.
Move approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and approved. We have an agenda. Onward to approval of the minutes. We had our minutes from October 11th. Did folks have a chance to look at those? Any questions or concerns or inaccuracies?
Move approval.
I will second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from October 11th. Any further questions or comments? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, minutes are approved. All right, so we have a couple things going on, the second quarter report and of course some budget amendments and a 3-year budget forecast. I'm assuming, Lynn, that you were leading on all of these. I don't know, Jeff, did you want to tee anything off?
I'll just say that, I mean, the second quarter report, I mean, hopefully folks have had a chance just to look through that. That's a very solid report. I mean, everything, you know, a lot of our revenues are looking, so again, we would expect right around 50% in terms of revenue and expenditures, and a lot of the revenues are greater than 50%, and some of the expenditures are less than 50%. So I think it's a good, solid report. Lynn, I think you probably had maybe a few highlights that you wanted to mention, but I think we were thinking that most of our time would probably be spent on the budget amendment and the 3-year forecast rather than spending time on this, unless there are particular questions or things that you noticed that you'd like some additional explanation on.
It looked really good to me. So yeah, I don't know, we'll hand it over to you, Lynn, to see if you want to highlight anything.
All right, thank you. Good morning, all. Nice to see y'all. So yeah, as Jeff indicated, yes, we're on target with our revenues, collecting 59% in comparison to the prior fiscal year at this time at 44%. And we have really met or exceeded the majority of where we should be. Going down the line, columns, just to highlight, you know, our assessments. The invoices for our assessments went out in January. We've already started collecting those. And so we are where we're supposed to be. We'll collect the majority in January, February, and we might have 1 or 2 come in March. We don't anticipate not receiving any of those. And we have received in penalty funds. We've received 230,000 penalties from, you know, a couple single sources. And miscellaneous revenue, why are we at 362%? Well, we budgeted 22 and we did sell one of our vehicles. So that brought it up. So I'll take that in consideration when generating the budget, when we will likely be including a car purchase. We'll also be selling one of our cars too. But really, there's not anything out of the ordinary other than what you're seeing here on revenue. We'll be collecting obviously our grants reimbursements in February for the second quarter. There's always a lag. We incur the cost first, and then we'll receive the reimbursement. Any questions on our revenue before moving on to expenditures? All right. So on our expenditures, we are at about almost 50%, excuse me. Yeah, 50% in comparison to last year, 45% the same time period. Again, our total payroll we are where we are supposed to be. Salaries and benefits. The salaries and benefits will change a little bit, and we'll be talking about that in our budget amendment. Main reason why we're having the budget amendment. For non-payroll, you know, we're at 52%. Again, we're on target. The insurance, we prepay our annual premium to Honduras. And anything other unusual? Nope, there isn't. So again, we're on target. On to building operations and maintenance. We're slightly under budget at this point in time. You know, I think the largest leasehold improvement was, that includes our HVAC changeouts. So we'll be looking at creating a bid over the next couple months for 2 of our older units that were here in the, well, early 90s. So they are still working. We don't know for how much longer, but we know we have budget authority in the event we have to replace those. The next category, total program operations, having to do with our wood smoke program, Chica Peak, air monitoring. We are slightly above there, and that is a result of some the ARP grant that will be completing at the end of this month, early actually, 5 months early, and that had to do with the purchase of the Chica Peak air monitoring trailer. Other than that, we're 57% on the program operations, and bottom line is we are slightly ahead, collecting more revenue than our expenditures at this point, but really the true picture will happen at year end. And again, it's a good report to provide the board of directors. Any questions here before we move on to the fund balance and take a quick?
No, and I will probably just use that last line that you said, that, we're tracking where we're supposed to be. Revenues are a little ahead, expenditures are a little behind. So I think the documents that are in the regular packet speak for themselves too. So thanks a lot for making it so clear, Lynn. We
are where we should be. So
we're better than we should be. We are better than we should be.
Yes, we are. Yes. we hope to continue, and it appears we will be. So our beginning fund balance, July 1, 2023, we started with 2.2 million, and 6 months into the year, we're at 2.4 million. And y'all know where our fund balance allocations have been board directed or assigned by external factors. 976,000 are committed in some way, and we have 1.4 million that is unrestricted. Questions on that?
Actually, I want to go back. I do have one question.
Yes.
I wonder, as we look at purchasing another vehicle, whether it might not be time to look at electric vehicles. And I'm wondering because I just saw yesterday the grant awards. Jefferson County got some grant awards, but we're going to have DCFC chargers up and down the Hood Canal now fairly soon.
Yes, so that's definitely something. I mean, we frankly, we looked very hard at that before our last vehicle purchase. And so, but yeah, with more vehicles becoming available and more chargers becoming available, I want our next vehicle to be an EV and start. And then, then we'll need to put in some chargers here at ORCAA. And so we want to look at that as well. But yeah, that's definitely the direction that we're planning on going.
Cool. It seems like the MRSC should have some budget documentation too about how life cycle costs of electric vehicles should be compared to other vehicles. Yep. It's just it's apples and oranges in a lot of ways.
Yes. Yeah. The MRSC has some good, they've had some good webinars and there's some good resources there. Absolutely. So.
When we purchased our most recent vehicle, we ran into some challenges. The availability, the 1 year out, the cost. Those costs are, coming down, which is a good thing. But the challenge was the competition out there. Everyone else wants an electric vehicle too. And we did put it out for bid, website and various other places. We were not successful. We even tried going, our next step was hybrid. Again, there were challenges there. So we were lucky.
Yeah, I think the demand has slacked off a little bit. And I'm also, of course, in regular conversation with the other local airs. And I know Puget Sound's Clean Air, that they're looking at purchasing some EVs, and also Northwest Clean Air is getting ready to purchase. I think they've decided on the Volkswagen ID4s. But anyway, so yeah, that's where we're planning on going with our next vehicle purchase. Absolutely.
So as in my years as I've been going through, we deal with a lot of that with the different boards and stuff that I'm on. I want to remind everybody that yes, there was a time where that was hard to get, but that's not accurate anymore. Now it's actually easy to get. Now they have a surplus. But at the same time, I want to remind everybody that one of the reasons why there's a surplus right now is because things are not available like they should be yet. There are not in place yet. There are grants that are out there to get them in place, but they're still not done. To me, it would make a lot more sense for us to be going for those grants and stuff first and utilizing those grants to do this instead of spending our other monies. It just doesn't make sense to me. Yes, it's a feel-good thing, but we're just not ready yet unless they're going to pay for it. So I would recommend that we do it through that process first, and take advantage of the idea that they're wanting to get rid of some of these.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about either later this meeting or the next meeting in terms of the hiring, but we're filling one of the positions that we'll be filling hopefully by the end of the month here is a financial specialist. Lynn and I have put into that job description some capacity around grants, investigating grants, helping the agency have more grant capacity. So Randy, I totally agree with the Inflation Reduction Act and other monies available from Department of Commerce, Ecology, others. I think we should be able to take advantage of grants to help support some of our efforts here.
Well, and then we have our regional transportation organizations. Greg, I think
Yes.
you and I, our counties may belong to the same one. If that's so, I serve on that. I've been the vice chair for years, and I can tell you that there's been a lot of opportunities for grants there that we haven't taken advantage of. I know me as my county, I'm not ready to, or I would have already done it. I think your county is a little better prepared to do that, and maybe we can look at doing that. Maybe we can also look at teaming up. Teaming always makes a difference when it comes to grants. We're all a member of ORCAA. If we end up doing something like that and doing it through ORCAA and then all signing on to it, the first thing we'll probably want to do is get some of that money to build some of the stations. I know that money's out there. So if we did it as a team, we can create our own line of charging throughout our area. So
Well, we applied in Jefferson County and just got yesterday awards for 3 charging stations. So
Yeah.
they're going in Quilcene and Port Ludlow and over on Claylock on the west end,
Yeah.
as well as a bunch of other places. And that's, the embodiment of CHIPS and happy to work together and keep trying to get on. Are you on PRTPO?
yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, I'm the vice chair of the Peninsula Regional Transportation Organization. But what's and like I said, that's why I know you guys are in a different position than we are, but we've never done it as a team to sign on for ORCAA to do it in order to have a stretching area for us in particular, and perhaps even get the vehicles. Then we are doing what ORCAA would want to do anyway. We're given stations and areas. I just never thought about doing it through ORCAA either, to be honest with you, until this came up. I've always been on that board, and I thought to myself, I just don't have the ability. I've tried to connect schools, but that's a complete different thing. They're not allowed to participate through that organization, which is ridiculous to me. And the cost of getting those, and right now these hybrids, you end up spending more per gallon because the vehicles are much heavier. So you end up losing out on many different things. But I think we ought to look at a team effort. I don't know that we've ever done something where you have Thurston, Mason, Jefferson, Clallam, Pacific. That would look pretty good.
Yeah.
Strong
Okay.
hand. Yeah. Yeah.
So Greg, quick question, the chargers that you mentioned that are the county has funding for, are those level 2 or level 3 chargers that are going in?
Each of the sites has 2 level 2 chargers, and it's a third party that's going to actually install them that we partnered with
Right.
America or something, and then 1 DCFC charger. They're the direct current. They go straight into the battery, and they're what people call the level 3 chargers.
Right. Okay, great.
Because Jeff and I talked to PSC about these different charging stations here at ORCAA. So there were requirements that we have not met the minimum requirements. So.
And I just want to add, I think it's a great idea, Randy. Like there could be a really cool economies of scale. In fact, I wonder if any jurisdiction in Washington has already negotiated a wholesale purchasing agreement that we could even sign on to an interlocal like that if we did get grant money. You know, we do that like with fire engines and a couple other things around the state where there's purchasing agreements that we can join into through interlocal agreement. My wife and I test drove and are looking at the Volkswagen ID4, and I want to say I was blown away because I was like, well, how do you even know how to get somewhere and map out the charging? And like the guy got in and showed us on the computer, he said,
Yeah.
go to Spokane, and it said drive to Ellensburg and charge for 18 minutes and then you can go to Spokane. And that kind of blew my mind that you could do that with that little charging. And I'm still skeptical about the battery acquisition being environmentally friendly, but otherwise,
Takes
I'm
5 years
sold.
to balance out, is what I've heard.
Yeah.
But
Well,
you know,
and in my opinion, you're right to be skeptical of that because there's some terrible things we have to do in order to get that. But I want to tell you, there's another thing that's come up though. There was just a news thing that had just occurred where a gentleman decided to try. He'd never done it before. Decided to try and drive from Chicago, and what was supposed to be like a 9-hour trip ended up with an 18-hour trip because literally all the way the charging stations worked out. And even though it said that they would have 35% when they got at this place, they had 7% and were scared to death as they're waiting. It just doesn't work exactly like they would plan, even though when he first got in, the same thing you said, he was like, wow, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be easy, but it didn't work out. And then the thing that caught me off guard, because I don't have one, but I never would have thought about it. The vehicle uses power overnight. So if you have a vehicle and you've got 35%, you wake up in the morning and you've got 17%. And they never accounted for that. And that's why he got stuck in a few different areas. It just doesn't. So there's a lot of things that are still working out. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think we're almost there. And if we can get a few more of those stations, then that creates the stability. But if we piggyback off of our desire for clean air in order to have a line from his home to your home, of which I'm in between, you drop 5 or 7 in there. We've just helped our whole stretch on this other side.
Yeah, that's
From Jim, from yours up north, you're going to be connected. But if you wanted to go in the other directions, that's where we can make a difference. And again, before this came on, I never would have thought of that.
well, let me just read, like, according to this list, Mason Health in Shelton is going to get 4 DCFC chargers, level 3 chargers,
Yes.
1 level 2, and then Longview gets some, Claylock, Port Ludlow, Seaside, Luwaco. I mean, this is going to make the 101 is going to be fully covered with chargers.
Yes, but sadly, they're not being set up for economic development or for actually making the trip better in a lot of these areas. They're being placed because you get money, and you just start putting them. I wish it was better than that, but that's our reality unless we were to work together. Imagine,
Hey, Greg, before you move on, I just want to point out, related to this, in the chat, I put some links that I promised Jeff for him and Lynn that are for the Department of Commerce, and they have a solar storage technical assistance program that's free, and then a grant program. And so in fact, they're trying really hard to get to rural as well. So if either of you have buildings that are interested in that, it'd be worth passing on to your staff.
Great, thank you. All right, sorry for the tangent.
Actually, you may have spurred a great idea and a working together opportunity that never would have happened if you hadn't said all the words you said. So yes, we haven't done it yet.
The Olympic Peninsula high-speed train line.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Lynn, you were,
Well, that was, I think we reached the end of our second quarter financial report, unless there's any further questions. Great.
onto the budget appropriations or budget adjustments.
Yep. So, so Dan, could you bring up that that document, the summary document, please? So this is something, again, we've been talking about this since I think September, when Lynn and I first mentioned that we'd be coming back to you about halfway through the budget year with a request to make a budget amendment, because again, that's when I laid out the organizational changes relative to some of the retirements with Mark Gooden's departure, with Robert Moody's pending departure, and the reorganization, combining their positions, and the need to add a new inspector, and then also the financial specialist position. And so again, with all of that coming, Lynn recognized that there was going to be a need for a budget amendment. So essentially what this does, got a couple documents here. This like 3-page document just kind of takes you through this kind of the overview. Things are unfolding pretty much as we expected them to. And again, of course, with ORCAA, with about 80% of our expenditures being related to salaries and benefits, you make some adjustments there, and means that we need to do the budget amendment, that we will exceed our spending authority. The news is all good in here. Again, we've got a budget amendment of $135,000, but we've also got more additional revenue than we were expecting. And so actually what we expect to have to borrow against our contingency funds is less than we had projected when we first put the budget together last spring. So I think that's kind of high level. With that, maybe I'll hand it off to Lynn to walk us through some of the specifics.
Can I ask one question first?
Sure.
Reading through this, I was afraid Robert was already gone, but I mean, is Robert taking that dual manager, that combined manager role at first, or what's?
No, so
Robert's arc.
Yeah, so Robert's still with us. He'll be with us at the meeting next hour, and then his departure is at the end of February. And so, but that's coming up soon. But again, in combining the positions in combining Mark's engineering manager position with Robert's compliance manager position was sorry, my phone's ringing and trying to quiet it. Rather than call it a engineering / compliance manager, calling it a compliance manager, but it's kind of the new and improved compliance manager. So compliance includes both the permitting side of things as well as the inspection side of things. And so, so I don't know if Greg, if that answers your question or not.
Yeah,
but
but Robert's here till February answers my question. So
yeah, okay, all right. Sorry to go on for more than you wanted, but yeah, he's still with us.
Good. Lynn.
Okay, all right, here we go. So our budget amendment is obviously for fiscal year 2024, runs from July 1, 23 to June 30th, 24. We're requesting a budget amendment that was obviously from a previously approved board meeting on June 14th. And we're going to highlight what some of these items include. We're including requesting a budget amendment based on the fact that our expenditures that we have forecasted to the end of the year are much higher than what we have been appropriated and approved by the board. And so we're going to go through our first document of the revenue, expenditures, and appropriations. We'll move on to the fund balance, and then Jeff will, go over the org chart for you in more detail. So the budget amendment, again, it's $135,605. We've had some increased revenues in a couple of areas, specifically the new starts review, notice of construction, penalty, our state or federal core grant, and our interest income. We've already talked about a little bit of the engineering and compliance manager combination. It also reflects two positions, new positions, the financial specialist position and our air quality specialist. So on the revenue, the additional revenues amount to $201,145. The core grant, federal, we received $8,180 in addition to what we had budgeted. We actually received our final dollar amount and contract following the board approval of the fiscal year 2024 budget. So this was good news. And However, we did receive slightly less in our state grant. The reduction in the CPO ARP grant, the 2,159, I actually made a disbursement at the end of the fiscal year 2023, so I removed that. We are adding 60,000 under the NOC NSR Notice of Construction New Source Review program, and that's based on projections that we're seeing an increase in permits. Engineering staff are dealing with several new sources that were requiring additional time due to their complexity. And we're also seeing an increase in permit applications from existing sources to expand their facilities and make improvements. The increase in penalty, 130,000, we've already received, what, two I said, we already received from the previous conversation we just had on our quarterly. 6 months into the year, we've already received 230,000. We anticipate receiving more, and that is a result of one source, and almost, well, actually it's going to be two sources, and Jeff is going to elaborate a little bit there before moving on.
Sure. Yeah, I can say a little bit about that. So when I started at ORCAA, there were three sources that were three of our large sources that were out of compliance, and we were working to get back into compliance, but had some large penalties because of the non-compliance. So the first was Westport Yacht. We did reach so they're back in compliance now, and we reached a settlement agreement for 130, just shy of 135,000 back in April. And so they made a payment last spring for that. And that was, again, roughly, I think about 60% of the total penalties that we assessed, we settled down to that amount. Then we also settled actually in June of this year with McKinley Paper in Port Angeles. They were having they were out of compliance for a while, and again, so we reached a settlement with them for just over $343,000. They're making 4 quarterly payments. We've received 2 payments so far. They still have 2 to make of just shy of $86,000. So then again, they are now back in compliance. They've got, and we do need to update their air operating permit to incorporate some new control technologies that they have, but they're back in compliance. So, and then there's a third source that we're close. We've got verbal agreements on a settlement agreement, but we don't yet have anything in writing, so I'm hesitant to say too much, but let me just say that it'll actually be quite a bit larger than even the Westport and McKinley paper, and I'll be able to share more about that with you and the full board in next month, but I'm hesitant to share too much more at this point, other than to say that and again, our goal is not to, I mean, our goal is always to keep our facilities operating within their permits, but sometimes for various reasons that doesn't happen. We work closely to get them back into compliance, and yeah, so that's a little bit more, but I can answer any questions that you have about that.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question, but I have a comment I'd like to throw out there if you don't mind. And I'd rather do it here rather than do it in the open meeting with everybody else.
Okay.
A couple of pieces. One, I come off sometimes, I know I'm a tightwad, but let me explain, a little bit why I'm a tightwad. When I came into Mason County, we were backwards completely. I kept finding monies in different ways being, going out. We had a PERC ruling against us of 2.2 million. We had a commission that had borrowed money, never paid it back, had to pay. It just was crazy. So at one point in the year, I was down to 175,000 cash on hand for my whole county. That was in between the 2 pay periods. As you guys know, you got 2 pay periods basically. We literally had to hold our checks for about a week and a half. Because at that level, we had plenty of money that was going to come in, but it wasn't there. With that, went into disaster mode, and so I'm very extremely conservative. to the point to where when I see monies like this and things like this, the last thing I ever want to do is spend them. I want to keep putting them away until we can't do anything else with it. And I always worry that when we get things like this, we automatically look at ways to move it and to spend it. And that's what the actual budget is for. To give you an idea of how successful I've been at what I've done, and you're going to now realize that I'm more of a tightwad than you ever dreamed. When I told you that I was down to 175,000 cash on hand in the middle of the year, this year I was $29 million cash on hand in the middle of the year. And that's just my general fund. We don't have any of that. We have more excess surpluses and hidden money, so to speak, by creating these reserves that now I'm begging my commission to spend money because they say either we're going to give it back or we're going to give more services because we're not a bank. And we're at the position now to where we're almost like a bank because we've got too much money. Now that's just that story with that, but I wanted to make clear when it comes to this money, that's why I look at things the way I do. And I don't want to say it to the middle of the group, but in the future, I would hope that we look at it from those eyes with the idea that we will always hit a 3 to 4 year bubble that's going to kill everybody. And it's always out there. It's not my imagination. I'm not paranoid. They really are out to get us. So with that being said, I hope we keep that in mind. Number one. Number two, one of the prides that I had in this organization, when I first, and Jim, you'll remember, when I first came in, I thought I was going to go to war with these people. I heard all these stories and all the different ways that they were holding people down and they were using it just to make money and all these different things. And I found very quickly that the past director was definitely not like that. And neither was the board. The board and that director did everything they could to keep these businesses rolling, operating, and only took what was absolutely necessary to get them to do what they had to do, nothing more. And I was proud of that. And I would go after my first year, anybody said anything about this organization, I went to war because they were wrong. And I came in wrong because they told me all this stuff. Well, I wasn't wrong ever since then. Jeff, please keep that in mind because although we're doing well, we're making a lot of money, we can always do that. Personally, I do not feel that that is the way that we should be benefiting. And I appreciate you guys giving me a chance to say it here because now I got it off my chest. You've all worked with me a long time. As long as I say it, I can deal with it. If I can't say it, then I got to go to war at another point. So thank you for at least hearing me out on that, but I hope you'll also consider it as well.
Hey, Randy.
Yes.
Jeff and I talked about this at lunch yesterday, actually, and how important it is to have, a deliberate conversation about one-time money because we don't want to create any kind of a long-term bow wave for the organization that reduces in, a strap position that we create as well. And so when we're talking about a bigger settlement than we see today, we talked a lot about the board needing to just get together and do that strategic conversation because we need to know where our policy lies when we do have extra cash and make sure we have the bubble big enough before we sprinkle a little bit across the budget here and there and I think the cool part about it is because of the culture of our organization, we sit on money because we know there's going to be a rainy day and that makes it so that we are in a really good position. Almost every year we don't use anywhere near the contingency we plan on. And so I agree with you.
Yeah, and we're really good at that and not using, we budget to use some of the contingency and then we don't. That's Lynn, and that's why you'll always hear me, Lynn, jumping in there telling you how I enjoy working because I actually see what you're doing.
That's how I started doing it at work. I'm copying Lynn.
Yeah, because that is how I budget. That's how I do things. And I found out that's what you're doing here. I just keep my mouth shut and watch you do it. But at the same time, when these things are happening, we just talked about an opportunity when it came to the power grid coming through here. There's questions and abilities or requests for matching funds that make some of that stuff happen. If we start to put some of these monies away, we can find other ways to maybe utilize that because we have it. Imagine having an extra 500,000 or something like that. That sounds like a lot, but like I said, for me, a few years back or 8-10 years ago, having a extra of $1 million would have sounded impossible because we were budgeting to $35,000 extra. That's it. And now I literally have $30 million extra at the end of each year, and it's growing. I don't know any other county that has it. It's funny. You'll appreciate this, Lynn. Lynn, I moved my county, believe it or not, to a cash basis.
Wow. Whoa. Really?
I did. That's how I was able to gain control of it and get away
Interesting.
with the 13th month and everything like that.
Okay.
Like I said, so when you hear me talking in these things, you'll understand it's through necessity that I became the a-hole that I am.
Good to have the reason. Thanks, Randy. Yeah, no.
Appreciate your input and yes, and in here, our in-house, Jeff and I have these conversations and at our managers meetings too. We recognize these are one-time um, opportunities for us to look at that. But on the other side, we would like to see the increase set aside instead of being 20% or 2 months. 6 months is not
Yeah.
a difficult, well, something to consider. The board of directors can consider a higher than 20%, 2 months operating. That's a quick time period. And some of these one-time events also help us bring on the staff that we need, the number of staff. I will say that, yes, we are understaffed, and these 2 new positions are going to be a tenfold to bring us the assistance that we need in a number of different areas. One, Jeff already said, the grants, applying for those grant opportunities. We don't want to miss out on them. And, the building improvements, electrification of our fleet, the solar, there's a lot of good things that ORCAA and the communities will benefit for us moving forward, using these one-time things, but not misusing them. So we have those
Lynn,
conversations.
you started off saying that these budget adjustments were already planned. These staffing changes were already planned. This one-time funds is kind of a serendipitous incident that means that we don't have to dig into the reserves. So that's, I guess, how I see it, is that yay, we don't have to dig into our reserves as much as we have to. So
right, and we're halfway there, but we're all it's taking the whole agency working together here and doing your work. So being accountable. So we stopped at the 130,000 additional penalty revenue. Any further questions on that part before we move on to interest income? Again, thanks for your input all. The interest income, we increased it by 8,000, and I probably could easily increase that further only because I received my reports from the Thurston County Treasurer's Office, who holds our funds, and this does not reflect a 1 month investment income of 5,600. So the Thurston County Treasurer's Office is doing a tremendous, wonderful investment of our daily balance.
I mean, are they just doing that by leaving it in LGIP, which is returning like 6%?
Well, I can't specifically give you those the background there, but our Thurston County Treasurer staff it's amazing how they are doing their best at getting a higher rate of return, and we're reaping the benefits. So
Great.
Hey, Lynn, are we
Yes.
required to use their investment pool?
It's either the local government investment pool or the state, and because our bank is Thurston County Treasurers, we use theirs.
But is that a mandate or a choice? Like, do we have to use Thurston County, or could we? Because actually, my question is, have we ever had a third-party wealth management firm evaluate whether we're getting the most money out of the county that we can? And I'm just thinking about if we're going to be in a place where we're going to have a higher balance for a while, I want to make sure that we're in the right place with that money. And I don't know if the county is or if it's required.
Sure. That's something I want to look the RCW, and
Okay.
I know that we're required to use a local treasurer as our banker.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
office is here. I'm sorry.
Normally what I see is one of the county steps up to be the fiduciary. If they're the fiduciary, then you start trying to split it, they're no longer the fiduciary. And if you start putting monies in others, you have more than one fiduciary. And if you go out for the best bang for the buck, which is great in the real world, I love that idea if it was my personal business. But you do that with government type monies, and you have double the fees, double everything.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm a bigger scale, but I know I make more money at the city than the county does.
Yeah.
So,
I get you.
and we manage our own. I mean, I get that, and I think that we're part of a giant pool. So this is a conversation not for this amendment, but I would like to know, as we move along, what power we have in controlling our risk for some portion of the pool of the fund.
Well, Jim, I believe we have the ability to change our fiduciary to your city.
Well,
No.
there's an idea.
Well, I'm just saying that's what it comes out to. The ones that are carrying and taking care of the money, running the checks and everything like that. They're the ones that are.
I can look into that.
Yeah, that's certainly something we can look into. I'm just looking at the time and I'm hoping that we have a few minutes.
Get through the budget, Lynn, and we'll talk about it during the budget process.
Yes, sir. Okay, that sounds good. So that is the revenue. So we are planning on bringing in 201,000, 145,000 in revenue. And when you reduce our expenditures that we have projected that we'll go over next of 135,600, we're actually going to be reducing the contingency reserve needs by 65,000. So our original budget that has reflected 216,000 to balance the budget is now going to be 150,982. Moving on to the expenditures, as Jeff indicated, the majority of the expenditures the agency faces is in salaries and benefits. We're adding $97,784, and it's represented in the summary of expenditures by position and reflecting the number of months for these positions. I won't go into the detail because of the time constrictions we have here, but it also includes some non-payroll items, reconfiguring our ORCAA's office space, minor increases for staff travel, the hardware software purchase for additional laptops, software licenses, those do cost money. They're no longer just a off-the-shelf license anymore. You have to pay those monthly fees. Staff training for our new staff to send essential trainings, adding another cell phone for our AQS position in compliance, a minor insurance increase for our new vehicle, advertising of the various positions here. And moving on to the building and operations and maintenance, we have added some additional costs to our utilities and alarm monitoring. The cost of our quarterly and annual monitoring have definitely doubled. And consistent with the ARP revenue above, I reduced the $2,159 payment from year end. For OLIMAP, this is the balance of their MOU that we had with them that'll take us through June 30th. That outlines total expenditures of 135,605. As you can see, the net surplus of 65,000 is going to reduce the amount needed for our year-end budget contingency. So that takes us, wraps up the revenue and expenditures for the budget amendment. So with Greg going before the board, yes, we're looking to amend the budget by 135,000, which reflects 201,000 in revenue, 135,000 in expenditures. Any questions on this before? Yes, Jim.
Just real quick, why don't you back that 65 out of the contingency expense in the revenue?
Why don't I back out the $65,000 in? Okay, I'm
like you're generating a surplus at the end of the year that includes revenue from contingency. So why don't you reduce the contingency revenue line item by 65,000?
Oh, I did up there. I'm sorry. I did under the revenue. You'll see that. Oops. So the total revenue.
So shouldn't it be zero on the bottom then?
We're still doing a contingency draw. Wouldn't just not as much as we originally anticipated, right?
Yeah, but she's showing a contingency. Oh, draw of 65,000, but then showing a $65,000 surplus at the bottom line.
Mm,
No, the $65,000, that's how much less we'll be drawing from contingency than had been forecast.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm one column off.
Oh, that's okay. Sorry. That's okay, Jim.
Sorry. I'm
You're
sorry to confuse everyone. I
No,
apologize.
no. You're just throwing one out there for us to make sure we're paying attention.
Trying
Yes,
to trick
we
you,
are.
yeah.
Thank you.
It
Yeah.
looks good to me. I'm supportive of this.
Great. Okay, well, so this reflects our budget amendment. Moving on to the general fund page, you'll see basically, we started, you'll see the starting fund balance on the furthest right-hand column, July 1, 2023. We started the year at 2.2 million. Our revenues will be 3,158,000. Expenditures, 3,262,000, with an ending fund balance of 2,100,000, even after the budget amendment.
Cool.
So our general fund contingency draw, again, 150,982. All these roll back to the previous page we just discussed. Any questions?
My only question is, I saw this on the budget, on the agenda for the regular meeting as well. I'm not sure if I should summarize this, or I think, Lynn, you can summarize this more eloquently than me, so
Sure, I'll
I'm
take
not
off
planning to
somewhere.
speak to it in that report unless you guys think there's something I should speak to.
We'll take it from where you leave off. How's
Yeah.
that?
Yep. I mean, you could just mention that we discussed this at the finance committee meeting and then hand it off to me, and then I can say a few things and hand it off to Lynn. One thing I'll note, though, we do need either Jim or Greg or one of you to say, basically to state that the discussion today opens up the public comment period on our budget amendment, that it's now open, and that the public comment period will continue through our regularly scheduled February meeting on Wednesday, February 14th. And so at that, because we will have actually a public hearing at our February meeting, so we're open for comment on that. And then by the end of the February meeting, the board will take action to adopt this budget amendment or make other, but I mean, the board will decide what the board wants to do, but hopefully adopt this budget amendment as presented at the February meeting.
Okay, Jim, do you want me to open that, or do you want to open that up? I mean, and you said open up for public comment. Are you talking about testimony? Are we opening? We're not opening the
No,
hearing.
we have a 30-day comment period and then a public hearing at the February meeting. So
Correct.
Yep.
I'll just do that after. I'll ask for a motion to do that after Lynn presents the budget.
Sounds
Great.
A motion specifically to open up the 30-day window comment period
Yes.
window,
Yeah.
for the adoption of the
fiscal year 2024 budget amendment.
Right. So today we won't take any action. If we wanna massage it at all, we can request that staff bring that back next month. But otherwise, it's just opening up the comment period.
yeah, I was gonna say, we are taking action to open up the comment period, right?
Yeah. But I mean, not on the budget itself.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Hey guys, before we leave, I've been thinking about what Jim said over and over and over again, because there's the logic of finding the best ways to invest money is always a beautiful conversation to have. Jim, there is a way that I just thought of that it is possible to do without having to upset all the apple cart and having a different fiduciary. And that is to create a line, an investment line where a certain amount of money is put out for investment. Let's just give an example. Let's say we create a line for outside investment of $200,000.
Mhm.
Then the fiduciary that's doing our bills isn't keeping track of that. What we do is we have that money separated going out to either the city or to an investment company or something like that.
Mhm.
By doing that, I believe, and Lynn will correct me, but we are able to do what you were asking and still keep our fiduciary without upsetting the apple cart, because they invest that money that they're holding for us until it gets spent.
Correct.
Yeah.
And legal funds, you're right. Mhm.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and I'll look at the RCW too and confirm that. We actually years ago had to go before the legislature to seek approval to have air agencies generate their own warrants for accounts payable. Before, that was limiting all air agencies in the state to the local auditor's office. You had to use your auditor to generate all your accounts payable and payroll. And the prior director and I went up and testified before the legislature and got that changed. That was
Wow.
a number of years ago.
That sure makes it easier on our
Oh,
fiduciary.
lordy, lordy, yes. Yes, it does. So,
Wow. I didn't know that.
yeah,
Great
yeah,
job. It makes sense, but I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah. Did that with the housing authority too. And they just
All right,
want me
well,
to make my way.
I know we're about.
I just came up with one more question I want to ask before the meeting. Is the revenue loss that Robert's proposing in the rule change in this amendment?
I'm sorry, say that again, Jim. I found it.
The rule change that Robert's proposing for gas stations today has a revenue loss of 7,500. Are you putting that in the amendment?
That doesn't affect fiscal year 2024. It will affect because we've already sent out our registration fees for the fiscal year.
Next cycle. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's in fiscal year 2025.
Cool.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good
and it's
question. Good question.
and so what Robert's going to talk about and get direction from the board on is, do you want us to proceed? But we'll still have to do the rulemaking process around that, because
Fine.
that is a rule change.
Mhm. Right.
So
just-
in terms of, I know we're about out of time, the 3-year forecast was the other thing that we were going to discuss. Again, this is something that you asked back in September when Lynn and I were kind of laying out some of these changes and the budget amendments. Asked us to pull out the crystal ball and do what we could to project. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, or if we want to take a minute or two to walk through this. But I don't know, Lynn, if you want to say anything about the
I
assumptions
dig
that you
you,
made.
Lynn. I'm looking at your budget and I dig you. You are conservative with those dollars, and a lot of people in your position would take advantage of that, and you go the opposite in some of these. I dig you. I just want to say that.
I thank you, Randy.
I want to suggest that we could skip this until we know that one last settlement.
Okay.
Right. Right, but
It changes everything.
Okay. All right, yes, so it was interesting forecast creating this, but yeah, look at it on your own time and bring back questions next month. We have not scheduled a finance committee meeting in February, but if you see a need, please let us know beforehand. But at this point, there is no finance committee meeting scheduled unless you suggest it and request it.
You're on mute, Greg.
Yep, thanks. No, that sounds good. I don't think we really have time to dive into the 3-year forecast. I appreciate it. I don't have a lot of questions. It's a great document just to kind of be able to reference as well. So I don't know, do you guys see a need for a meeting in February, a finance committee meeting? Jim, Randy? So unless something changes.
Yeah, the next one is scheduled for April, where we will discuss our $3rd financial report. So
Oh,
It will be in person, right? That's our field trip day?
Yes, exactly. So that'll be in person,
Oh.
and then we'll also, that's where we'll start talking about our fiscal year 2025 budget as well.
Okay. That sounds
Hey,
great.
before we run, I'm going to mention today at the meeting that we need to appoint next month the finance committee for the year. Do both of you want to continue?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
Happy to.
So I'll plan on the same appointment, and I'll figure out what to do if I get more people that want to do it.
okay.
Well, I'm simple. If I'm not a waste of a seat, I will be honored to be honored. But if somebody else wants to or something, I'm not going to hold them back.
Okay.
The more people that know our money, the better off we are.
I don't disagree with
mind.
that. Yeah, totally.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Can I say
Hey,
one
Jim,
other
We
thing
have
about
enough, we have enough
ID4s?
board members that we could have our alternate here learning too alongside if they wanted to.
Yeah,
Hey, Jim, speaking of board members, we heard from Dave Tobin from Pacific County. He's not going to be able to make it. So, and wasn't sure if he was going to send Jerry Doyle his alternate or not. But so I know we're going to be likely short from Pacific County.
all right.
And we need
Anything
5.
else?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Anything for the good of the order? I got one thing. ID4s, if you need to tow anything, Jim, I know lots of people have bought ID4s and then the dealer says they can put on a hitch and they refuse to put on a hitch. Like it
Oh yeah,
violates.
no, it comes with a 1-inch utility trailer hitch. It doesn't have a tow. I have a real car for that.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure. And you know, newer ones qualify for the tax rebate, but I think older ones that might be new on a lot don't often
Yeah,
based on the
totally.
manufacturer.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we are adjourned. We'll see you in 5 minutes, but right back here.